And off we go! Go faster! Thanks, little one. We owe you.
Hey everyone, this is Scott from RPGFan.com, and we're back with another preview. It is the year of the JRPG 2024, and this time we have a Visions of Mana preview from Square Enix. Thanks to the lovely people at Square Enix, I had the chance to sit down and play Visions of Mana. There were two parts to the demo, and I also got a chance to sit down and do an interview with Mana producer Masaru Oyamada. So we have two interviews, actually. One was done by Mike, our editor-in-chief, and one was done by myself. So the first part of this video is going to be about the gameplay we got our hands on. The second part will be the interviews we got to conduct. I will also give my thoughts on each response because we learned some impressive tidbits about the game in those interviews. And I hope you guys enjoyed both of these parts. Let's just get into it. Let me start by saying the Mana series means a lot to me. I'm a massive fan of it. I always have been, especially Legend of Mana. If you know me, Legend of Mana is one of my favorite games. Not only because of when it came out in 1999 alongside Chrono Cross, which is also a favorite of mine, but also because it helped me through a dark time in my life a few years ago. The vibrant, colorful, and just joyous nature of the Mana games is infectious and can lift your spirits when you're feeling down. Visions of Mana is no slouch in this department. Before I go into any details, I will start off by saying that Visions of Mana is stunningly beautiful. It's the most colorful game I've seen in a long time. Visions of Mana is like watching a rainbow on your TV screen. Every color is just popping out. From the greens of the grass, the lovely reds and pinks and purples that you see from the enemies themselves, and the characters, it's just unbelievable. I think it's going to be one of the first impressions that most people take from looking at this game, and it's going to stick with you for the rest of the game too, because some of the stuff they have planned out for this game is just unbelievable, and I'm looking forward to seeing every single part of it. The gameplay of Visions is equally as great. The best way to describe Visions' gameplay is that they took everything they learned from Trials of Mana and improved it. It has tighter gameplay, more options in combat, more significant roles through exploration, and more interactions with the environment. It just has this very glorious storybook feel, and I think it'll be a fantastic game. So the first part of the demo is the open field part called the Fallow Steppe. You have control of three characters, Val, Karina, and Morley. The time we had in this part was maybe about 20 minutes or so, to just explore the field and enjoy the environments and the battle system before we got to the second part of the demo, which was a little more in depth. I could say right off the bat that these areas are vast and filled to the brim with lots of things to do. And we're even told that some of the things were taken out for the demo, so expect more come full release. There were some quests to complete and plenty of combat and exploration. We also got to ride on top of these adorable mounts called pickles. In the 20 minutes I had, I was not able to get to the end of this area, so that should give you a good idea how big this area is. The most standout parts of exploration were the elemental triggers in the field that you had to interact with. An example is that you can use Sylph, the air elemental, to help you jump high up top of a mountain and open a chest up there. Or you can use the moon to rewind time for a chest that's already been opened to open it again. I ran into a few spots where we could use other elementals, but we didn't have them yet at this part of the game. But it does tell us that there's a reason to come back to old areas after getting other elemental spirits later in the game. One of the spots I found was the Dark Elemental spot, but I couldn't access it yet because we only accessed the moon and wind for the demo.
This was our victory. Take this! Behold my power! You're finished!
There were plenty of enemies to fight in this part as well. All three characters were playable in combat, and you can switch your team them by pressing up and down on the D-pad. Each one plays very differently depending on the currently equipped class. Combat is simple, easy to pick up, and easy to play. Your regular attack is bound to the square button, and your special attack is bound to the triangle button. A mixture of both can be used to create some pretty awesome combos. You have a dodge button in a circle, and then you can access the ring menu by pressing left or right on the D-pad. You can also shortcut a lot of stuff by pressing L1 and R1. So if you don't want to use the ring menu system to cast magic or items, you can bind them to shortcuts by pressing L1 for items and R1 for magic. Each character has access to different spells, which also seem to be customizable. Once again, they learned a lot from when they remade Trials of Mana. The most exciting thing is the R2 and L2 buttons. So the L2 button activates your super move, which is tied to your super meter. You've seen these in Trials of Mana. The animation is based on your class, however, and not your character, so every class has its own unique super. We have 3 characters and 8 elemental spirits, so there are 24 complete super animations throughout the entire game, and each one is cool, flashy, and fun. The coolest part of combat, however, is the R2 button. This lets you use your currently equipped elemental vessel to do additional things in combat. Each character can have one elemental vessel equipped, and in the demo we had access to wind and moon. For example, pressing R2 with the wind equipped will throw the wind boomerang and suspend enemies into the air. Then, when you attack the gust of wind with the enemy in it, it will burst into shards and do damage to the other enemies nearby. The cooler of the two, however, was access to the moon elemental. When you got to use the moon elemental, it created a time bubble for the enemies to get stuck in, and then you could beat on them as much as you want. But that wasn't all. If you entered the time bubble, it also made casting spells super quick to help do additional damage or get off those emergency heals in those desperate situations. It was very cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the other 6 elementals can do. By mixing and matching them, you can make combat really fun and unique.
This shouldn't take long. Next.
So speaking about classes, we had access to 6 of the classes in the demo, with 3 moon and 3 wind elemental classes. For wind, we had Val's Rune Knight, which gave him a big 2-handed sword to bash enemies with, Karina's Dancer, which gave her 2 fan blades to throw around, and Morley's Nomad, which gives him a katana that gives him precision attacks with some range to them. For moon, we had Val's Aegis, which gives him a sword and shield to guard against attacks, Karina's Moon Charterer, which gives her a spear with some reach, and Morley's Nightblade, which gave him 2 daggers to become quick and ninja-like in his combat movements. Every class feels fun and unique to play as. To give an example, Val's Rune Knight has a charge attack that's very reminiscent of, say, Greatsword and Monster Hunter, while Morley's Nightblade makes you feel really quick and you can attack as much as you want. Each character has some individual uniqueness as well. For example, Karina's special attack, no matter which class she's on, allows her to summon her baby sacred beast Ramu into battle, either by riding on it or sending it in to headbutt enemies. The little touches and charms to each character in class really shine through. And if the hints during my interview with Oyamata-san were anything to go by, some of the other classes are even cooler to see.
Can we make a pit stop? I want to pick some.
I have to fulfill
The other
my
part of this
duty.
demo was the Mount Gala section. This section was more streamlined and less open world than the previous section. I would say it's more on par with the exploration parts of Trials of Mana. You can go off the beaten path to find some treasure, but for the most part, you are led to your objective that ends in a boss fight with the classic mana boss, the Mantis Ant. Maybe the coolest part of this section is that we can see the elemental triggers can do multiple things. For example, the bridge is out, but you still need to cross the gap. That's not an issue, however, since you can summon Sylph and then create a path of floating stones to help yourself across. The boss fight was also pretty great as well. As someone that enjoyed Trials of Mana's bosses a lot, this felt right at home with me. He's big and intimidating, but he telegraphs his moves a lot, and he has an obvious weak spot on his butt. Using the elemental triggers in this fight helped a lot and be able to do large chunks of damage as well. I can't wait to see all the other classic mana enemies in this style as well.
Don't get hit by the Sharbit.
What do you think I am, stupid? I'm trying to avoid them.
You're mine. Let's use the elemental vessel.
Time to get to work.
Take this. Looks like the vessel had an effect.
So that ended my time with the demo. But from here on out, I'll go over both interviews we had with Oyamata-san. These are available in text format on the site and are in the description below for quick access. I won't go over every question that we went over because if we did, we'd be here for a very long time. If you want to check them all out, please go check out the links down below. But I will go over some of my favorite questions and some of my favorite answers, and some of them are really going to surprise you. So the first question I asked was, so one of the most unique things about the Mana series is each new entry has its own approach to gameplay, while still feeling similar to previous installments. Which Mana game would you say had the biggest impact on Vision's development? Oyamata-san responded with, so from that question, I get a good sense of how much we truly love the series. So from the early inception of the series, Koichi Ishii has always mentioned that the main objective of the Mana series is to have an ambitious challenge as the game launches, which has always been a fundamental theme for the series overall. So as we have developed Visions of Mana, it has been 15 years since the last installment. So for me personally, when I see this long legacy of a series, I wanted to incorporate things I personally loved and what fans loved about the series. So in that sense, we have bits and parts from all past games. So all the past titles have influenced this making of this game. I then go on to ask my favorite question of all of them. We know that Visions of Mana will be a single-player game, but many of my friends and colleagues' favorite parts of Mana series is the co-op multiplayer. Was there any point in development where you thought about implementing multiplayer or maybe adding it in the future? So Oyamata responds with, so when I think about my favorite memories of playing the Mana series, I remember playing the game with my siblings when I was young. And so when we were initially proposing the project internally, that was the idea we had to incorporate multiplayer elements. But when we were thinking about how we could brush up the game to make it worthy for a modern audience, and since it was the latest installment of the series after so many years, we had to think about what elements we needed to prioritize and how much to present the game to a new generation of fans. So we knew we had to satisfy a certain visual standard for the PlayStation 5 and incorporate certain gameplay and exploration elements into a new system involving elemental spirits. Ultimately, we did have to select and choose which parts we had to focus on, so we decided to focus on single player. However, when I think about the future of the series, I do know the feeling you're mentioning about sharing that experience with someone and going on the same journey together. Being able to share that feeling with someone is something that I want to consider in the future as well, since it's a feeling that I hold on to myself. Hearing that answer makes me really happy because one of my favorite things, like I said, about the Mana series is the multiplayer sometimes. And honestly, even though Visions of Mana will be single player and it's kind of disappointing that it is, I'm still going to enjoy it. But this also means that we might actually get another Mana game in the future that will be multiplayer, and they haven't forgotten about this. So I'm really excited when that will happen. One of my favorite things to do while doing these interviews is asking the developers what their actual favorite parts of creating their games are. So I asked, of the classes that they can talk about, which one was your favorite class and why? So Oyamata responds with, so when it comes to classes, I think when players select their classes, there are always people who might gravitate based on the visual element or the action-based element. So from a visual aspect, this class hasn't been announced just yet or revealed, but Val's Fire Elemental class is something I love because it's actually reminiscent of a past character in the series. And when it comes to the action aspect, I do feel as though the classes for Darkness are just something I find very cool. And when I was playing the game, I tended to gravitate toward those. And so for this demo, you only access the Wind and Moon elements. However, when the full game's released and there's an opportunity for people to play the game, I do hope that maybe you will give those classes a chance as well. So this begs the question, what exactly is this character that they're reminiscing? Is it possibly the boy from Secret of Mana, aka Randy? Or could it be maybe Durin from Trials of Mana? Those are my two best guesses because Val has a very common look for those two characters, and it's the Fire Elemental class. But who knows? It could be anything. I'm honestly looking forward to it because if there's one callback class, then there might be multiple. So to piggyback on this question, I also asked which area of the game is his favorite, and which one is he looking forward to players experiencing when the game comes out. So Oyamata responds with, first of all, I always loved Secret of Mana. And one really important inspiration is the Mana Tree illustration that Hiro Osono illustrated in the past. So for me, this area right before that in the game is something I really love, and it's one of my favorite spots. In terms of an action perspective, I unfortunately can't go into too much detail at this current stage. However, I mentioned earlier that the Darkness element is something I personally really enjoy playing, and there's an area that the Darkness elements play a key role. I personally found that area to be the most fun while playing. So for those that do not remember, that is the illustration that is on the box art for Secret of Mana. It's also part of the opening scroll. It's the big mana tree with the 3 characters in front of it and the flamingos. Honestly, if they can make that part of this game, I am looking forward to it because I've always loved that illustration. So I also had to ask what his favorite new character was. And is it from a design perspective, their story arc, or maybe the gameplay they have? So Oyamata responds with, when it comes to story, I can't go into any details, but including his backstory, my favorite character is actually Morley, the cat character you got to play in the demo today. I'm also a father of 2 daughters, so whenever I tend to look at Karina, I tend to look at her from a more parental perspective and feel emotionally connected to her because of that. I had one final question for Oyamata-san, and it was probably the most important question of them all. And I asked, so I have an easy final question for you. I love a lot of the recurring stuff in the Mana series, such as the Rabbites and the Elemental Spirits, but I didn't see what I was looking forward to today in the demo. I have to ask, can we expect to see the dancing merchants come back? They are my favorite part of the Mana series, and I love watching them dance. So, it got a lot of laughs in the room, and Oyamata just simply turns to me and says, please look forward to it. So we can expect some dancing merchants, boys and girls. It's going to be fun. So I wasn't the only person on staff that got to do an interview with Oyamata-san. A couple days later at PAX East, Mike and Hillary both got to do an interview with him, and there's some really cool questions that they got to ask as well. So I'm going to go over a few of those as well. Mike and Hillary asked, because of the aerial combat now in Visions of Mana, we're curious that if it has influenced the story and the world design, like adding a level of verticality to the design of the areas. Oyamata responds with, yes, absolutely. Actually, since the original technical testing that we did, we knew that the game itself expanded, that we had to also think about it vertically. We thought about what would be a really great way to have players experience the game utilizing the width and the breadth of the field, and also the verticality that you mentioned. That was when we really decided that we wanted to lean on the elemental spirits as a kind of core of the gameplay. And it's really from there that the rest of the game design sort of started to fall into place. So Mike and Hillary follow up with, since we mentioned the elementals, we got a hint that they're a more core part of the gameplay this time around. But what can you tell us about their role outside of gameplay in Visions of Mana? And Oyamata responds with, in terms of gameplay and overall story, the elemental spirits are entities that support the world itself. They exist as a kind of fundamental entity within this world. In this game specifically, they have an existence that's much closer to the characters that you encounter while playing. So whenever you see the wind blowing in the game, you might actually see little tiny sylphids that are kind of floating and drifting about. Or, if they're a water area, you might actually find tiny little undines that are popular in the area too. By incorporating this into the game this way, we really wanted to make sure that you get a feel for the breadth and the life that are featured throughout the world. So Mike and Hillary also asked a really important question, which I think a lot of people are going to ask. And they said, you obviously are fans of Legend of Mana for a lot of reasons. What can we do to get Yoko Shimomura on this game? Oyamata responds with, you know, I have approached her, but however, it's very difficult just because of the fact that she's so busy, because she's so involved in Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy, but she's also working on the orchestra concert she does. But yeah, in general, it's just very hard to get a hold of her. And to wrap it all up, Oyamata asked Mike and Hillary a question. And he asked, I did want to ask you a question since you had a chance to play the demo. Was there anything in terms of the mechanics or just like overall controls that as you were playing stood out or felt off or anything like that at all? And Mike and Hillary respond with, I think it played pretty smoothly. I definitely noticed some Final Fantasy XIV inspiration during the boss fight specifically, like the markers on the ground. I also think it made it a little bit easier to follow. Otherwise, I think it controls great. It has a really nice feel to it. And I like that all the classes really do feel different when you're playing them. Like some are faster than others. I really do love when developers ask questions back, because especially a question like this, which basically means they're still fine tweaking the battle system even at a late stage of development like this. This game is coming out in the summer, and the fact that they're still looking for feedback is an excellent sign that this game is going to play fantastically. So that is all the time we have for today for this preview. I would once again want to thank everyone at Square Enix for this opportunity, as well as Oyamata-san for his time answering all of our questions. If you've enjoyed this preview, you know what to do. Hit that like button and leave a comment. It really does help out a lot. And if you have any questions, I will do my best to answer them down below. Also, don't forget you can check out Mike's written impressions of the demo, as well as the full interviews with Oyamata-san on the website. Links are available down below in the description. Also, join me on our Twitch page or Discord if you wish to discuss Visions of Mana or any of the other amazing RPGs that are coming this year. And as always, I'll catch you all in the next video. Peace out. Have a great night.
Karina, one who dances on the wind with sacred peace. By the grace of the goddess of Mana, I name you the Olm of Wind.